Welcome to the Look Good, Move Well podcast.
Okay, we're at it. This is our third recording of 2023, and I think we're off to a pretty good start.
Yeah, I'm feeling good.
We got some good topics that we've covered so far, and gotten some great questions from our listeners. And we got another juicy one for today. But what shall we banter about a little bit?
Well, we had such a great icebreaker topic for our staff meeting.
Yep.
That just yesterday. And I'd love for you to share with the people, if you're open to that, what your focus on for 2023 is.
Shoot. Okay. Well, I got the clock. I got Nate's clock staring me in the face, and I'm going to try and be concise because I'd like people to have the opportunity to hear the rest of our episode. But there were two things that I talked about. But I think the one that you're probably referring to is just sort of that it's been, I've been in the social media game for a long time, and it started really in my social media presence as a fitness professional really started in the CrossFit era for me, when I was competing in a sport that at the time was not super popular, became quite popular, and that was sort of how like a little bit of pseudo fame came from that. Now, little context, and as I'm thinking about this is not going to be a short icebreaker.
Just go for it.
Just do it. Okay. When I was in my 20s, early 20s, I got into, I was lifting weights, and for the first time in my life, I combined dieting principles with my athletics and my weightlifting and really my bodybuilding training in the gym. And I was probably 20 years old when this really all started happening, 1920, where I followed a pretty strict diet, and it was a cutting diet. It was like, eat this to lose body fat. And it was, I was very dedicated, and I had a good muscle base prior to starting this, and I followed it to the T, and I got very lean. Like, for the first time in my life, I had a visible six-pack, and like my muscles had really good definition. You could see striations in muscles that I'd never seen before. I could see, like, in my quad, I could see like horizontal striations, like not just like that went in the same direction as the muscle tissue, but I was like, whoa, what's that thing? It was very lean. And so much so that I got like really into seeing this body. I was like, dude, that's great. Look at that body. Like, man, that's cool to look at. Like I did that. That was work. And I didn't really understand like the complexity of like what was happening and how the diet played into that. I was just like, oh, if I eat these foods and I eat it like in this amount, like I'll look like that. I'll just do that forever, right? Like no big deal. Little did I know I was like in a pretty severe calorie deficit, and that I was training hard, really hard, and that at some point like there was a life the life expectancy of that behavior, combination was over, and I couldn't sustain it anymore. Yet I didn't know what the next move was, which was, in hindsight, I was like, well, I needed to start to kind of reverse diet or bulk a little bit or put on some more weight or eat some more calories or kind of balance my system out, because I was like super depleted, and my hormones were starting to tank, and my psychology was starting to get messed up, but I didn't realize this until it was kind of too late, until like life and injury forced the hand on me. I got injured. That was the body's way of being like, hey, you've been pushing it too hard. Like, we can't get you to stop. And now your SI joint is broken down, and you got pain, and now you're going to stop. And I've told the pain story before, but it led to basically like, that experience in my life led to like several years that were pretty painful for me, where I did not have a good, healthy relationship with food. I was sort of like, and my body transformed back to a shape and a way of performing and moving that didn't look like the really lean guy that I was in college. Like, I put on a bunch of body fat. I gained 25 pounds. I wasn't performing well. I was, having a bad relationship with food. I was kind of like, I kind of developed like an evening, late night binging kind of behavior pattern where I would just eat a lot at night, and then I'd wake up in the morning and be like, okay, I'm not gonna eat like that much. I'm gonna just like go train. I'm gonna eat like a bird all day. And then it was like, I'm doing this, and it was just this pattern that just kept going on and on and on. And I was stuck in that cycle for many, I mean, certainly months, but years really. Until, fast forward a number of years, I got kind of into this thing called CrossFit, or there was a step before that, but basically like CrossFit in a way, I don't want to say saved me, but it was a very important period of time in my life where I basically was like, I had been far enough removed from like the like very focused on aesthetics to now like where I wasn't thinking about it as much. And I was like, this is all about like performance. Like everything's about performance now. Like I got to eat to like perform better. I'm going to eat and fuel and recover and just get stronger. And like, I could see this growth trajectory happening for me in CrossFit that was supported by eating more balanced, eating more food, eating lots of calories, training hard, getting stronger, like in a way that was very, somewhat sustainable, but it was a different type of sustainable or a different type of approach than this, like starve yourself, train hard, try and look shredded all the time. So that was a very impactful period of time in my life where I was mindful of the food I was eating, but mostly from a perspective of like, is this going to help me perform my best?
Yeah.
And like, I kind of lived under the assumption and belief that like, if I ate enough, trained hard enough, and I didn't like just eat junk food, like I would maintain a decent physique. And I did. I looked pretty good playing CrossFit. Like I had muscles, I had a six pack. I was, by all estimations, very lean. Like this was, and I didn't have to think about like food and the choices of like, should I eat this? Should I cut this? How many calories? Like I didn't count calories during CrossFit. So anyway, that became sort of my, again, like sort of a grounding period of time for me in my life where it was like, cool, I don't really have to like live in this constantly thinking about how food is impacting my body, and which was a seed that was planted in my early 20s and really stuck with me for years. It was hard to like live with because it kind of felt like a trap. It felt like I couldn't be free of that. And I wanted to be free of that. And I heard in many of my clients, they wanted to be free of that. And it was like, let's change the focus from like food changes the way my body looks to food can positively impact how I perform. And that was really a groundbreaking period of time for me. And back to the social media thing, that was when I was like exposing a lot of myself and my training philosophies and my coaching philosophies in social media. I was just the guy that was like the CrossFit athlete, competitor, and coach. And I talked about all of this very openly on blogs, on Facebook, on then later on Instagram. And, I would show a picture of my meal. I'd show a picture of my training, but like, I didn't talk about it from like, eat this much and this is how you can lean out. And, that was that phase of my life. And then when I stopped competing in the sport, I kind of stayed in that mindset of like performance training. But as the years went on and I was retired and I wasn't trying to compete, I was like, hey, you know what? I can't just like I'm not just like eating to like perform and fuel myself every day. It's like, I don't need to be eating the same way that I was eating when I was trying to win points and build a 400, 500 pound squat and deadlift. Like my needs are lower. I need to be mindful of that, because there was a period in the retirement era of my life where like I was kind of just eating with the same mentality that I ate when I was competing at the peak of my career. And I felt my body start to change in a way where I was like, oh, I don't really love this feeling. Like this doesn't feel like when I was competing. This feels like I'm just I'm overeating for where I'm at right now. I started to gain some weight, and I started to just feel like it didn't feel balanced. So I started to, and I got into a whole host of digestive health issues in and around having kids and being underslept and being stressed. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to reevaluate what's going on with my food. And I started to like pay more close attention. I'm like, well, here, I know how to track my inputs and understand what's happening. Let me go back to that. And I got back into this process of not counting calories as much, but just sort of tracking my food very closely. And tracking my food closely, and, you know, starting in 2019 and then 2020 and 2021, like there was this kind of 2-year period of time where a bunch of circumstances in our lives changed, in my life in particular. And I think that mindfulness of just like calories in, calories out, what am I doing? How am I fueling my body? I went through another dramatic like body composition change, and I got very lean relative compared to when I was competing in CrossFit, like probably dropped, 3 to 5% body fat, and my body changed, and I liked it. I was like, oh, I like these changes. It feels good. This body feels more aligned to where I'm at in life right now than the, close to 200 pound, 195 pound guy who was like trying to snatch 300 pounds. And I got kind of, I started to feel good. And then there was like this huge social media bump that we experienced, and I experienced through that phase. I would say in 2020, our social media account grew dramatically. And I'm not naive to think that a lot of that was, me training in my backyard with the sun shining on me in what looked like the most beautiful home gym setup you could have, and having just like eye-popping muscles that were really lean and tan at a time where most people were locked inside their homes and couldn't go and do something like this. And it was like, whoa, what the hell? Like, that looks really cool. Follow. And so that has an impact. It has not on like my ego, like, oh yeah, I got more followers, but like it had an impact on our business. It had an impact on how the eyeballs that we got and the attention that we got, and that ultimately led to, customers and people engaging with us, and us getting to spread the message of functional bodybuilding more, which was very, very rewarding and felt good. And so this is now like, a complex issue in my life where it's like I've had an exposure at an early age to being very lean, and then getting almost attached and addicted to like that feeling and what it looks like, to then and then having a dramatic fallout from that, where I did it in a way that was unsustainable, hurt myself, lost that body, lost that self-image, struggled with how will I ever reclaim a healthy body image and healthy self-image, to then being in a sport where I kind of got to escape that for a period of time, be like, hey, I've solved this. I just focus on performance. I try and win points and go that route. Then the sport was over. It kind of ran its course in my life. And I never really addressed what happened in my 20s. I'd never really addressed like what's a healthy way to kind of balance this without some extreme behavior. It was either extreme dieting or it was extreme CrossFit, but like, how do I address this without either of those things in my life? And then there was this other kind of circumstance that happened, which was like maybe this wasn't ever, we never anticipated a pandemic, but like the pandemic and me going through this like heal my gut, try and look for solutions, led to a number of circumstances of me basically tracking my food again, practicing intermittent fasting in a way, in hopes of healing my gut to a certain degree, then being in a pandemic where we didn't go out, we didn't have there was no like social food lifestyle distractions. It was like I could just follow the same pattern every day, and take my kids on a walk every day and train in the backyard, and then, I'm eating the same foods, and we do the same thing over and over again. If it's like aligned to, you losing body fat, like you can be very successful, and that happened. Then there's this positive reinforcement that comes through this like lens of social media and our company and our business, and what I see in the mirror, and then what I interpret is like, well, this is important, and this is sort of some of the identity. And then, hey, every podcast I've ever been on, be like, so this is Marcus Philly, probably like the leanest guy in CrossFit. Like, that's what you're known for. And I'm like, I guess that's what I'm fucking known for, like, Buttery Bros showing up, you're like, dude, you're the freaking leanest guy we've ever interviewed, like, and showing up at Mark Bell's gym's like, damn, you are vascular. And it's like, okay, this is the number one thing people say when I'm talking to them, and when I see them, and when I interact with them, and shit, that's kind of my identity. Like, how do I ever not have that? Like, how do I show up looking a little flat and looking a little soft and looking, bigger? So then it's like, how am I feeling as a human inside? And there were the last year I have explored there's certain patterns that get set that they take, our lifestyle patterns and the things that we do that make us feel and look a certain way, like, they're hard to break for everybody. And I have gone through this for the last 12 to 18 months, exploring some of my own patterns that I needed to break to start to feel better. Because at some point, my energy levels from being as lean as I was started to decrease, or practicing my lifestyle the way I was, like, I wasn't as energetic at times of day that I wanted to be. I wasn't as mentally acute. I started to feel like my performance in the gym was not great. Like, I wasn't setting PRs. I wasn't pushing myself very hard. I was like in this perpetual maintenance mode. And I was like, at some point that stopped feeling good. And so I'm like, okay, how do I address this? Well, the things that I know can impact this dramatically are the amount of food that one eats, like how much fuel you give yourself to a certain degree, and your body composition. Like, at certain levels of body composition, your body is able to like be robust health. If you get too low, certain things start to shut down. If you get too high, certain things start to shut down. There's kind of a sweet spot. What is that sweet spot? And what is it for me? If it's, let's just throw a number, I don't even know, whatever, 12 to 15% body fat is my sweet spot. But I've lived at 6 to 10 or 8 to 10 for the last 3 years. And this is this identity, air quotes, identity, that is only an identity because people see me around the world through a lens of a camera, which then gets projected into the interwebs, right? There's no, I don't really have I have posted a piece of content every single day. And while some people might film 3 months of content and then let it run for 3 months, like, I have filmed with you all a new piece of content every single week for I don't know how many years. Like, so many I don't remember the last time there was not a piece of content. So it's current. This is me currently all the time. I'm not putting on my hoodie and going into bulking season and staying in the dark corner of the gym and then cutting and then, releasing that to the world on stage and being like, damn, but, and I'm not saying that that's what I need to do or what I want to do, but that's just not it hasn't been my reality. So, and then some other factors are that, I talked about my energy levels. I talked about, my mental sharpness at certain times of day, kind of noticing late 2021 being like, this isn't really good. This isn't feeling right. How am I going to address this? What's going on? The last year and a half, I got super lean and there were some changes to my lifestyle, my behaviors, but like, it doesn't feel sustainable, but how do I adjust this? What's this going to take? But the other factors have been, I would say for the better part of the last 20 years, like I have been under some physical stress through whether it's dieting to be lean, CrossFitting to be the best CrossFitter and pushing myself super hard, having kids, like, and there's this like common thread throughout all of that where like I've always done, when I've done blood chemistries, like what's going on inside, I've always tested really low, outside of the reference range on almost every test on my sex hormones, on my testosterone and my free testosterone have never been normal. They've always been low. And I've kind of like assumed, and I've talked about this on different YouTube episodes that we've done, but it's kind of made me like at times just be like, well, that's just who I am, like, and maybe that is, but there's also this sort of like question of like, how does that relate to my body composition? Is that a factor that's, suppressing that production? I don't know. I've never really explored that. And all that being said, like I actually in the past 6 months have physically felt like, some of the best I've felt in a long time, or that I worked on certain nutritional behaviors and fasting behaviors and, lifestyle behaviors that I would say that like today, like I'm feeling pretty good. I am pushing myself in the gym more. I've made some dietary changes and I'm not like, I'm suffering every day. But as I'm exploring changing things and being like, oh, is this going to make me feel better? Is that going to make me feel better? Like I'm really curious to spend part of this year, pushing my assumptions about how my body has to look relative to like how I want it to feel and function, and see if, when the thought comes to mind, like, hey, maybe I want to like try doing like a pretty, like, for lack of a better term, a bulk, or like I want to add a bunch of calories into my diet to sort of like in surplus mode to like optimize my recovery and my performance. And like, if I really want to take that approach, I know, and it's already happening, like I come across and I come against a thought that is deep seated inside of me, like, oh, like a week goes by and like I'm struggling because I can see and feel subtle changes to my body where I'm gaining weight, maybe gaining some body fat. And it makes me want to like turn that whole thing off, be like, no, can't do that. Like that's like a deep seated thought that's there that is related to the past 20 years that I kind of roughly outlined in 20 minutes. How can I try and like quiet that noise in my head, and basically like, and this is what many people, the vast majority of people that I have talked to and actually gotten vulnerable with and had these exchanges have some type of like deep-seated body image, I don't want to say issue, but just like perception that doesn't match reality in some way and impacts the choices that they make or stops them from making new choices. And that's what I'm super curious about. And I'm just like starting to, like, these are thoughts that I've had for years, but I'm like, why am I not vocalizing this? Why am I not talking about it? Because the more I interact with people in all walks of life, the social media influencers, like coaches, people that you look at, you're like, damn, they're super jacked and ripped. And it's like behind the scenes, it's like, yeah, man, my energy sucks. Like, or I got body dysmorphia and like, I can't bring myself to like do this. And I'm thinking about going on TRT because like, I've just sort of lost my edge. And then you hear like, I mean, there's all this shit that's out there.
Right.
And I'm like, why are we all talking about this? Like my fear is that I get to, and I said this to somebody yesterday, It's like I get to 45 or 48 or, 5 or 10 years from now, and life happens the way it happens, and certain circumstances change, and whatever happens, like I'm at a different place in life then, and my body reflects that different place. Like I'm not as lean, or I've maybe lost some muscle mass, gained some body fat, or, whatever. My body, I'm like, I got a dad bod. Like, I don't know what it's going to look like. But if I get to that point and I'm Marcus, not the, fitness influencer looking type, but I look a different way and I feel amazing. And I'm like, dude, I feel freaking amazing right now. What the hell was I doing 10 years ago thinking this was like not the way I should be looking? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to have that question mark or that, realization. But it's like, I don't know. It's not like, well, here's the recipe to go and solve the problem and experiment and examine it. Like, okay, well, for the next 6 months, I'm just going to pack on body fat and I'm going to see what it's like to be like this. It's like, well, that's not easy. That's not an easy thing to do for somebody who has 25 years of this type of living and behavior and drive and movement and whatever, behind me. And I think I've suppressed a lot of this thinking and discussion because I'm like, dude, you're just making a big deal out of something that's not that big a deal. Like, you're fine. Everything's fine. Like, maybe this is too much to even consider that there's like, cause I'm, me, I'm like the perpetual, like, well, what's the, how am I going to level up one more notch? Like, is this just another way of me being like, there's another way to even be better as a human? Like, I don't know, but, it's a curiosity for sure. And, I definitely would say that, like, I would personally like to, arrive at a place where there's a little less mental preoccupation with this question, because I think that that's what many of us strive. It's like, if, let's say you're overweight, and you just think about it every day, like, I'm fucking overweight. Like, it, at the end of the day, you could calculate all the times that your thoughts went there, and you're like, dude, I'm spending 2 hours a day thinking about this thing. I just don't want to think about it anymore. Like, is it possible to stop thinking about it and not change my body at all? Perhaps. Maybe there's some talk therapy you go through. Maybe there's some, there's a way to reframe who you are, and you just like, hey, I'm great, like self-acceptance. Like, I'm great the way I am. Or maybe it's making behavior changes and losing weight. Like, I'll pour my energy into that, so that, and the trade-off will be that I won't have to think about this anymore. And vice versa. In my instance, it's like, well, what might be the change or the manipulation to the way I look at social media, the way I perceive myself in this business and in this company, my body and how it needs to look on camera, or how I need to see myself in the mirror to feel good, or what is my what body dysmorphia do I have? Like, it's funny. Like, I look at the pictures of me competing in CrossFit, like at 2016, like the side by side from then to now, and I'm just like, dude, I was thick. Like, I see like a totally different person that, like, I'm not sure how I've even moved in that body, like, that's just my perception of what I see. Put those two pictures in front of someone else, and my wife every day is like, damn, I liked you when you were a bit thicker back in the CrossFit days. Like, can we get that back? And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't know how to do that. Like, it's not, it's not the game I'm playing right now. Anyhow, so this was, I feel like that is certainly much more than I talked about yesterday in the icebreaker, but I hope it provides some context to what I'm talking about. I hope there was some value in that for people listening. And, I didn't mean to hijack the whole, session here, but that was, but it's certainly on my mind. And at the beginning of the year, looking forward, I think the thread that maybe people could hear is, what are the assumptions that we make about how our bodies should look and feel? Are we chasing an ideal that in the pursuit of that ideal that you've created in your own head, I've created in my own head, this ideal body, is there something that's like is a trade-off being made that is detrimental to just your wellness and happiness? And how can we, like, you know, what's the path to bringing that more into balance? It's super complicated for every single person that I've encountered that goes deep with me on this topic.
Yeah. Well, there's so much there, but as you were talking, the thing I was thinking about was how when the power was out for the last 24 hours at my house and I was with my daughter, there was so much mental energy that I was devoting just to how are we going to eat? How are we going to be comfortable? How are we going to stay occupied? How are we going to get through this thing? And I think that there's such a feeling of freedom and opportunity when the thing that's been so present in your mind and taking up all your energy is like, oh, the power's back on. That's such a relief. Now I can, like, think about all the other areas that I want to grow in my life. And so my hope for you is that it's an area of opportunity, and that if you can find a way to change the inner story and that dynamic that you feel locked into, or that's just habitual for you to always go to that place when you want to explore something new, then there could just be a huge opportunity for you and for anyone else who's doing something similar this year to see what else can unfold when you take a different direction.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I keep coming back to something I'm trying, it's like something I'm using on a regular basis. It's like, I know what it feels like to do it the way I've always done. And the reason so much thought goes into it is because there's a question and a desire to understand if there's a way that is better, more freeing, not just from a physical expression standpoint, but from a mental, emotional standpoint. And I've done it long enough this way that I remain confident that I can always go back to doing it this way. And that allows me, and that's the thing I tell myself to, like, push through. It's like, how far can you get from where you're at today? Like, push yourself outside of that. Because I think the path backwards to where you are is, you've got that one pretty grooved. Like, you could find your way back to this, and the worst case scenario, you come right back to this, and this is as good as it gets, you know? But there's a challenge to move into a new way of experiencing life and taking on life. And yeah, it's going to be hard, but on the other side, there could be something really amazing and beautiful that, like, makes you feel X amount better, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll say one more thing from the business and marketing standpoint, which is that I feel like functional bodybuilding has so many more things to say than you just need to look amazing in your backyard in the sun and be doing these cool looking things. Like, we have so much to say and so many different ways to say it, and so many ways that we can have an authentic conversation about these things. And that is all part of fitness and health as we're all going through this together. So I look at that as an opportunity as well.
Yeah, I believe that too. I know we do have a lot more to say, and I think it's, I do know at the same time, this is a weird time it's a weird time in our lives where, and it's only going to continue down this path for some time, where getting people's attention to even hear the message is harder and harder. And it requires, you know, you could have the best message possible, but people might never hear it, you know, and I don't want people to not hear our message. And I think if someone says, like, well, there's all these other ways you could reach people, I'm like, you're right, there are. And if this one also is, you know, helping, then I don't want to give that one up too. Like, I don't want to turn down any of the, you know, the knobs on our ability to reach people, or that's sort of where I come back to. But
Yeah.
no, I don't want to discount. I mean, certainly I don't want to discount the contribution that you make to this too, where it's like, thankfully, you do what you do so well for us, because we can reach so many people, and we have a very robust and diverse marketing approach that is not just shirtless workouts in the backyard, thankfully. So yeah, how's that?
Yeah. I think that's a good note to end on.
Okay. Well, thank you all for listening. I'm going to bump you out with this one. Please send us more questions and topics that you'd love to hear about. And particularly in this one, if there's anything anything you're experiencing in your life, and assumptions or fixed, long-held beliefs that maybe you're struggling to break, I'd love to hear what those are. Specifically, if you can, around health and fitness and wellness. And maybe we can get up here and challenge some assumptions and give you a different way of framing it, and just be a place to hear and normalize that thought pattern, because if you're having it, I'm sure someone else is having it. So send those in to us, DM us on Instagram or any of the other platforms, or email us over at Functional Bodybuilding. We'd love to take in that feedback and those topics and those stories and share them. Anonymously, of course.
Either way.
All right. Have a good one.
See ya.